A world of regions. Learning objectives. Trace and discuss the emergence of the North and the South divide clearly. Main points include identify and explain the characteristics of regionalism thoroughly and communicate Asian regionalism critically. A world of regions. This refers to the world divided into geographical, cultural, economic, and political divisions. Contemporarily, the presence of regions defines the global landscape and is characterized by the interconnections and interdependencies of various areas or regions of the world and the reasons for such dynamics.
The third world concept started during the Cold War in post-1945 decolonization. It represents the newly independent states in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. It emerged as a third force that resisted the dominance of the West, US, and the East Soviet. In the 1955 Bandung Conference, the non-aligned states united to resist imperialism and neocolonialism. This term we also used to describe underdeveloped or global south countries. Akong insight ano is, para nako, importante ni nga concept kay give voice sa mga small and developing countries nga kasagaran ma-ignore sa global politics. Dili na to makita nga even if weak sila ng economically, nagyapon sila role sa balance of power. Did you know it should unite among decolonized nation against global hegemony? It gives legal identity to organized state and world affairs. It also highlighted the struggle for independence, equality, and development, and even today, it remains relevant when we talk about inequality, poverty, and global power. Did you know the term Third World was first coined by Alfred Sauvé in 1952 in his article 3 Worlds, One Planet? Insight na ko dali kung taon na to karon bisan gi-coin ang word nga Third World decades ago. Connected gyapon siya sa issues like poverty o inequality sa atong nasod. Murag reminder siya nga dili pa equal ang development sa kalibutan. Modernization theory and the three world ideas. Modernization theory was developed in the post-2 era. It is Western countries like Europe and North America as models for development. It explained the underdevelopment of the third world as being caused by internal, cultural, or social shortcomings, not by colonial history. This theory also assumes that all countries can follow the same linear path of development just like the West. For me, kung insight ani is honestly, medyo bias ni siya nga theory kay murag blame ra ang third world countries sa ilang culture ug society. Wala niya recognize ang impact sa colonization. Para nako, mas fair unta kung consider pod ang historical struggles sa mga developing nation.
The dependency theory and the three world ideas argues that the underdevelopment is a consequence of historical and structural exploitation by the core of the periphery, focuses on the colonial legacy and global economic system that keeps countries dependent on the West. The world is divided into a core rich, unindustrialized countries and periphery or the poor resource dependent countries. Global inequality. This theory shed light on the roots of global poverty and inequality, offering insights into why some nations remain underdeveloped. Shaping policy. They have influenced international development strategies, especially post-colonial state-building efforts. Critical lens. Theories like dependency theory challenge simplistic views of progress and show how historical exploitation continues to impact the global south.
The Brand Report in 1980 showed the economic divide between the rich global north and the poorer global south. It explained that the south depends on the north for the trade, finance, and global decision. To address this, it's called for a new international economic order, NIO, to create a fairer system for developing countries. The report also popularized the terms global north and the South instead of the first, second, and the third world. The North-South divide shows inequality in wealth, power and opportunities between rich global north and poor global south countries. The 1973 oil crisis proved that South's power, leading to calls for a new international economic order to make a system fairer. Today, the Asia remains important in discussion about poverty, trade, climate change, and sustainable development. The term Global South is a use instead of a third world.
Understanding the Global South in three trajectories. The first one is the region as an object impacted by globalization, externalist view of globalization. In this view, globalization was pushed into Asia by the West. The evidence for this is the European traders, Spanish and American colonization, Portuguese in Malacca, and Magellan in the Philippines. World War II, World Bank, and IMF reshaped the region. Effects for this is economic growth but also loss of traditions and dependency. The second one is the region as a subject pushing globalization forward, Asia as a springboard. Asia also drives globalization. Evidence for this is the spice trade, China's tech, medicine, governance experiments during colonial era. And today, China's factories, supply chains, regional trade, and cultural exports like K-pop and anime. Not just a receiver of Western influence, but also a global influencer. The third one is the region as an alternative to globalization, anti-global view. Regions can protect identity from being consumed by globalization. Asian exceptionalism. Asia has its own unique culture and system. The regionalism. Countries work together on their own terms. It shows that there are alternatives to globalization. Regional cooperation helps preserve independence, culture, and power. Lastly, Asia proves nation can address global issues while keeping individuality.
Manifestation and evidence of the anti-global view. Asia shows it can lead globalization in its own way. Japan's Asia's for Asiatics, Mahathir's Asia's values, Asian plus 3, and even a Thai village making its own money all prove Asia's strength. These examples show that Asia can shape globalization while keeping its culture. We have locating the global south. First, we have global interconnectedness shapes everyday life. Second, we have globalization creates cultural sameness. Example, Starbucks looks the same everywhere. Third, we have north-south divide, deeper poverty, child labor, weak governments in the south. Fourth, we have uneven globalization, modern symbols like Starbucks with side shanties. Fifth, we have the south often excluded from true globality due to IMF, World Bank, WTO policies, debt, and crisis. Sixth, we have double standards. North forces South to cut services like healthcare education through strict policies. And seventh, we have neoliberal reforms, worsen poverty and inequality in the South.
Locating the Global South by Lisandro E. Claudio, 2014. Lisandro E. Claudio explains that globalization creates both affluence and poverty, shown in the Starbucks and the Shanty analogy, where modern progress exists beside deep inequality. The root of these inequalities come from colonialism, a neoliberal globalization which continue to divide the global north and south. However, the south is not just a victim. People and communities respond, resisting unfair policies and reshaping global politics. The global south is also collective identity, symbolizing solidarity among developing nations. Yet, globalization remains unequal, as powerful states and corporations benefit more than poorer countries. In conclusion, Kalju emphasizes that globalization both develops and underdevelops, lifting some while leaving others behind.
Labels of inequality. The key highlight North and South, First and Third World describe underdevelopment and exclusion from global politics. Importance highlights underrepresentation of poorer nation. Fun fact Global North wealthy or industrialized, Global South developing or struggling nations.
Relevance of the Global South. The key highlight made the term central in globalization studies. Importance provide a framework to analyze globalization impacts. Fun fact, Global South is now widely used in academia and policy. Asian regionalism. ASEAN 1968. The key highlight formed to unite Southeast Asia against communism. Importance gave security and solidarity during Cold War. The fun fact, ASEAN was created in the Vietnam War era. APEC 1989. The key highlight created to monitor markets and promote trades. Important, advance economic cooperation in Asia Pacific. Fun fact, works on open regionalism initiatives are non-exclusive. ASEAN Plus 3 1997. The key highlight, ASEAN joined with Japan, Korea, China strong economic ties. The importance boosted regional integration led to ASEAN Plus 6 East Asia Summit. The fun fact laid the foundation for East Asia Summit. East Asian Summit plus TPP 2010. The key highlight added US and Russia with TPP as a board trade framework. The importance expanded Asian regionalism with global powers. And last, fun fact, marked China and US as a major players in Asia Pacific affairs. Three propositions of Asian regionalism. First is the geographical Asia, which is too diverse for cultural Asia. Asia is home to many religions, languages, and traditions. This cultural diversity makes it difficult to form one united identity, since homogeneity does not guarantee regional unity. Second is the geographical Asia is too small for globalizing Asia. Asian economies are deeply connected beyond their borders. For example, China's major trade partners are outside Asia, and Korea has more trade deals with the US and EU, showing that Asia's growth relies heavily on global links. And lastly is the third one. The geographical Asia is too conflictual for strategic Asia. Regionalism requires solidarity, trust, and cooperation. However, ongoing rivalries, tensions, and historical conflicts among Asian states make it harder to build long-term cohesion.